audiences have only known him as Tyrus for years. The towering pundit who transformed Fox News panels into unanticipated outbursts of conviction and fun with his thundering laugh, keen wit, and clear confidence. After seeing the jokes, viral videos, and headlines, viewers assumed they recognized the person behind the microphone. However, Tyrus's public version has always been just that, public. Seldom does the man beneath the surface, the one who grew from setbacks, second chances, and silent resolve, enter the spotlight. That's why everything changed in a single, uncomplicated instant. He was photographed strolling through downtown New York with a woman who the majority of his admirers had never seen. There was only a casual smile and a hand grasped with quiet assurance, no statement, no red carpet posture. As usual, the internet froze the picture, enlarged it, and questioned, who is she? Perhaps the most important issue is, how did the biggest voice on late-night TV get into something so realistic, so grounded, and so still? One must draw the camera backward, way back to the beginning in order to comprehend the impact of that moment. On a chilly February day in 1973, George Timothy Murdoch was born in Boston. His father was only 19, and his mother was only 15. They were more afraid of each other than stable, and their fears soon turned into violence. Home was a battlefield, not a harbor. The world hit first when Tyrus was still small enough to gaze up at it. One eye was permanently enlarged due to a strike from his father, leaving a scar that never completely went away. Gathering what bravery she could muster, his mother ran away with little more than her kids. As they fled the threat, they encountered yet another form of rejection. She was given a place to stay by her family, but her children were turned away because their father was black. The choice to place the boys in foster care caused a permanent fracture in little Tyrus. He discovered too early that belonging might disappear in an instant and that love could be conditional. When he was younger, he believed that if he could only alter his appearance, he might be able to alter his place in society. For a child, it was devastating to consider skin as a barrier to home. He concealed that wound with bravado, hardened it into comedy, and carried it in silence through scrambled addresses and unfamiliar faces. There was new volatility in the relationship when his mother finally took him back. She has experienced new towns, schools, and men in and out of her life. Before he was even 13, a stepfather's rage caused him to lose his front teeth. The kid who would become Tyrus had made up his mind at the age of 16 that pain would not be his permanent home. He left after putting his little belongings in a black trash bag, which served as a metaphor for his escape. He spent weeks sleeping in places that seemed safer than the mayhem he was accustomed to, such as empty classrooms, buddy basements, and locker rooms. But one thing remained constant throughout it all: football. There were laws for the violence on that field at last, and hard work had value. He was given a map by the game, and discipline sketched the path. Then came college, first at Antelope Valley and then at Nebraska Kearney with a scholarship offer. He wasn't a flashy recruit, but he was unstoppable once he strapped on those pads. Coaches recall the work ethic, teammates recall the fun, and he remembers something more basic: the first real mentors who showed him that character is developed through accountability more quickly than praise ever could. His physical education degree was more than just a piece of paper, it was evidence that perseverance could pay off. He continued to push despite running out of money, balancing bouncer shifts with the compensation of substitutes. The night that totally changed his orbit then arrived. At a club in Los Angeles, two inebriated clients got into a fight. Tyrus calmly and authoritatively broke it up, separating them while joking. A professional wrestler in the crowd that evening saw the entire event with amazement. He saw a performance ready for a ring in that blend of humor, control, and showmanship. A few years later, Murdoch was Brodus Clay, walking under arena lights with the confidence of someone who had finally found his stage. He was no longer a bodyguard or a bouncer. He was well suited to the physical storytelling and dramatic conviction of wrestling choreography. Long before they ever met the man, fans got to know the character. He was a welcome novelty to himself, but to an audience, he was unstoppable. New identities, new audiences, and ultimately a new professional path, televised commentary, were brought forth by success. What began as lighthearted conversation with Greg Gutfeld during internet specials developed into a regular spot on Fox News. The juxtaposition of a former wrestler who is now a political analyst, together with elements of comic timing and unexpected knowledge, captivated viewers. Tyrus was well known by 2016, and his magnetism on TV had become ingrained in the nightly routine of American media. However, fame still causes conflict. In 2019, his name made news once more, but this time it was for accusations and litigation that turned his life into a front-page drama rather than for amusement or inspiration. Statements were made, laws were referenced, and insiders conjectured. Critics demanded explanations, while networks defended their procedures. For Tyrus, the whirlwind meant entering a tempest where the headlines and the truth clashed noisily. His image wavered between public curiosity and personal exhaustion throughout months of investigation. The media trial, he told pals, went deeper than any physical altercation he had ever engaged in. However, life continued to go on in the peaceful areas off camera. A woman named Ingrid Rink Herbert, who had stood next to him long before that commotion, was waiting among the flashing lights. Her visage was unfamiliar to most fans. For Tyrus, she had been there all the time for almost 10 years. They met in 2014 in a seemingly unremarkable way, a coffee queue, a half-joking exchange of numbers, and shared laughing about loud music coming from a nearby store. Nothing staged, nothing planned. Over time, peaceful weekends became an unspoken collaboration, brunches became workouts, and workouts became quiet weekends. She was creating a small meal prep business and juggling clients as a personal trainer, not chasing fame. However, he was more pleased by the consistency than the rush. Her serenity became a sort of miracle for a man who had experienced so many abrupt breaks. That serenity was evident when followers viewed the most recent picture of them strolling hand in hand. No press release, no entourage, just two people walking in unison through traffic. The reaction erupted on social media, half incredulous, half appreciative. The truth was more straightforward: their relationship wasn't designed for cameras. Some were shocked to hear that he was married at all, while others couldn't believe how different she appeared from the glamorous idea of a Fox News celebrity spouse. It was based on a common discipline, hers from years of guiding people toward transformation, his from survival and sport. Her narrative of perseverance was similar to his own. She had once shed over 100 pounds by pure willpower. Together, they learned that an audience is not necessary for perseverance. That's why that one picture resonated so strongly. Theirs was a whisper in a world when declarations are everything. Theirs breathed in a spectacle-wired culture. People saw evidence that progress may lead to a gentle place, not just a couple. Tenderness proved to be the most subdued form of power for Tyrus, who had constructed his image on swagger and strength. Additionally, that human touch was disarming to viewers used to punchlines. Journalists rushed to find the woman whose quiet confidence changed the story in the days following the release of that picture. The pairing was deemed unexpected by longtime admirers, although it made perfect sense to those who knew Tyrus personally. The man who was earlier characterized by confrontation now exuded a calmer spirit on television, which was explained by Ingrid's presence. Their home was a haven of order, humor, and discipline away from the studio lights. Every morning in northern New Jersey, the Murdoch residence was filled with both activity and purpose. The counter was covered with Ingrid spreadsheets, which included grocery lists with inspirational messages, workout timetables, and color-coded meal plans. Life, untidy, structured, and human, happened in real time. Between the clatter of blender lids and the odd buzzing of a reptile tank in the adjacent room, Tyrus frequently makes jokes about how, if it weren't for her organizational skills, he may still be sleeping in locker rooms. She applied the same perseverance that enabled her to shed 150 pounds to family strategies. She never romanticizes the metamorphosis when discussing it. She often says, change isn't cinematic. He finds resonance in the straightforward fact that it's repetitive, mostly boring, and completely worth it. He finds solace in someone who interprets strength differently after decades of portraying it. Accountability, showing up, not showing off, is Ingrid's definition of strength. Their marriage is based on this idea. Both of them are outspoken in public but reserved and meticulous at home. Fans envision pundits and glitter, but the Murdochs' favorite ritual is more straightforward: a leisurely breakfast followed by a dispute about which child neglected to feed which animal in what they lovingly refer to as the Tyrus Zoo. The zoo is real, yes. It started off as a single fish tank and a fleeting interest. Turtles, snakes, chameleons, exotic fish, and even Tito, a rescued lizard who regards the kitchen windowsill like real estate, make up the entire ecosystem. Ingrid wasn't overjoyed to marry into that scale-covered circus. She once admitted that she shivered when she saw reptiles. She was aware, however, that family seldom comes already trained. She therefore approached it as she would any other professional challenge: research the topic, establish a routine, and assign tasks carefully. Every child has a task to play. Rhett does the heavy lifting, Julia maintains the cleanliness of the enclosures, and Georgie, their daughter, manages bonding time. With a coffee mug in hand, Ingrid oversees, playing the roles of both nurturer and drill sergeant. Tyrus frequently claims that their home learned a form of order treatment from the animals. He was reminded that care is a daily word by seeing delicate species flourish, cleanliness requiring teamwork, and feeding regimens requiring constancy. The bigger picture of their lives is revealed inside that microzoo, a blended family that thrives on order after chaos. While Tyrus had children from other marriages, Ingrid brought her son Rhett into the union. That combination may have caused animosity in another household, but in theirs it became the norm. Being obligated rather than genetically became a lesson they teach their internet fans. Love isn't tidy, but it can be learned. Ingrid chuckling off camera, Tyrus towering near a terrarium, and teamwork-related messages that sound more like coaching than boasting are just a few of the glances captured on Instagram. It feels unscripted, which is why the internet loves it. However, there is an implicit consciousness of public scrutiny hidden underneath this everyday domesticity. Both are aware that a single misquoted tweet has the power to rekindle long-standing disputes. The noise never really goes away, even with official pronouncements and settlement paperwork. Bits of uncontextualized historical criticism abruptly reappeared on blogs in early 2023. They spent several restless nights scrolling through comment sections that conflated fact and fiction, as though a single social media repost could bring the past back to life. This new turbulence was measured in heartbeats and exhalations by Ingrid, the fitness instructor who previously measured progress in ounces and inches. She informed him, "You can't control the algorithm, but we can control kindness and breakfast." This became their unplanned motto. His survival technique had always been control. Her steady rhythm now provided him with a more tranquil kind of it. The change was noticed by onlookers. The once combative style on Fox panels gave way to more thoughtful jokes that were still humorous but restrained. His remarks held weight that reflected experience rather than hyperbole when the topic of redemption or second chances came up. Even if they were unaware of the reason, viewers felt it. In private, he acknowledged that marriage and child softened the jagged edges celebrity had cut. He reportedly told a friend, "Everything I used to fight for was about proving. It's about maintaining now." Their mornings together serve as an example of that shift. He gets up early and stretches quietly on the porch, still looking like the athlete he used to be. With coffee and a notebook, she joins him to write affirmations for clients or to draw out possible meals. Global stories, local rumors, and which fence panel has to be repainted are all topics of conversation. Laughter is heard more frequently than news analysis. Cameras may catch them leaving a downtown restaurant once or twice a year, but the true basis is this: two individuals who consistently choose peace while knowing the expense of pandemonium. Ambition hasn't diminished in spite of the peace. Her clientele commend Ingrid's no-excuse attitude and her ability to make discipline seem human, and her health business keeps growing. Tyrus, meanwhile, juggles coaching young athletes who make him think of himself, the towering boy with too much rage and too little guidance, with broadcasting. It sounds prepared when he tells them that success is more subdued than retaliation, but it isn't. It has been experienced. Every tale he delivers on television is infused with that viewpoint. It's not a sermon, but rather a constant reminder that humility and humor can coexist. Community became the couple's next endeavor as they settled onto their farm property in New Jersey. During a voluntary cleanup, the Murdochs distributed homemade energy bars instead of introducing themselves with a celebrity flourish, according to the neighbors. In the same way that repetition grows muscle, small gestures established reputation. Locals eventually stopped saying, "That's the Fox News guy," and began referring to them as "those folks who fix fences and rescue turtles." In a media environment that is fixated on scandal, that seemingly insignificant act of goodwill felt almost radical. Ingrid laughed when asked about being called a power couple during a podcast interview. She asserted that power is overrated. "We are a couple in logistics." The phrase went viral because it sounded sincere. He brings the story, I bring the schedule. It also disclosed complementing purpose, which is the key to their perseverance. She founded her career on organizing lives, or as Tyrus built his on controlling rooms. They produced equilibrium by combining a constant metronome with a flashlight rhythm. Every successful partnership finds its balance. Theirs just so happens to unfold in front of millions of observers. Both are aware of the narrative's vulnerability, though. He was viewed as a football player by one generation, a wrestler by another, and a political analyst by a third. Perhaps he is now perceived by this generation as something completely different, a man who is learning to relax. Because it reframed legacy, the picture of them strolling hand in hand was significant. Not the celebrity or the athlete, but the survivor who at last ceased enduring long enough to merely exist. What remains is that unexpected gentleness in the picture, evidence that resilience sometimes appears as rest, even though viewers scrolling through their accounts can argue about ideology or TV ratings all they want. Their union continues to captivate people because it reflects what many people want to have, a connection that feels both natural and hard-earned. On it, people impose their own narratives. Skeptics see PR tactics, romantics see fate, and redemption seekers sense closure. For their part, Tyrus and Ingrid appear amused by the readings. They are aware that hashtags and headlines cannot adequately convey what makes them unique. It thrives on recurrence, the routines that transform turbulent pasts into peaceful collaborations. Establishing a home that promotes peace was the most radical step for a man whose identity was formerly based on public confrontations. Therefore, when fans claim that they were stunned to see him with his well-known wife, it's possible that the lesson was more shocking to them than the woman. It's not always the case that strength roars on command. Sometimes it whispers over a kitchen table, making plans for the day as the coffee cools and the reptiles from their tanks wink with approbation. Every life that makes headlines ultimately fades from them, yet character traits frequently emerge when the cameras are not around. The tranquil seasons that followed the boisterous ones turned into Tyrus and Ingrid Murdoch's greatest tale to yet. Despite spending almost 10 years together, they did not throw a huge public ceremony. Instead, they were married in front of a small group of people on their farm on a chilly January morning in 2024. Just family, friends, and vows exchanged with laughter, no sponsorship agreements, no TV exclusives. The pictures are timeless, and the ceremony lasted 20 minutes. The emerald on Ingrid's engagement ring matched the soft green of her plain linen dress. He was dressed in a traditional black suit that appeared nearly understated on a spectacle frame. It was officiated by a neighbor. The only media attention came later, when pictures appeared online and shocked people once more who were unable to identify this softer version of the man they believed to be familiar. After the vows are exchanged, the mystery usually ends for celebrity marriages. They were really curious in what would happen if two people who had already experienced the worst aspects of life attempted to create something commonplace. Their constant repetition holds the key to the solution. Marriage made it clear how resilient their pre-existing values were rather than changing them into new individuals. His approach to husbandhood was driven by the same qualities that got him through studios, wrestling rings, and locker rooms: discipline, humor, and tenacity. Additionally, she managed public curiosity with the same empathy, tolerance, and practical wisdom that she used with her customers. They graciously rebuffed requests for interviews from tabloid reporters. Rather, they shared pictures of their homemade pizza nights, sunrise exercises, and their new fence. The message was constant: they didn't need to conceal their delight, but they also didn't need to argue over their privacy. The next spring brought actual fresh growth. A little farm north of the city, a patch of land with apple trees and old barns that creaked when the wind reminded them of their age, was taken over by them. The comedy concealed truth. Tyrus remarked that purchasing land was the most conservative thing he could ever do. Land doesn't cancel you. Soil grounded him in a way that television could never. He turned exercises into duty rotations by installing a weight rack next to the barn door. Ingrid taught small groups about sustainable eating while expanding her dinner service to include local sourcing. Producers were always taken aback by the film, even when a camera crew came in for promotional purposes. They documented mud boots, laughter, and dogs chasing kids around the fields in place of glitzy photos. Every frame went against the predetermined portrayal that network television had been using for years. The farm was always with him when he came back to Fox. Panel discussions continued to devolve into contentious arguments, but there was a new undertone to his comments: a guy who understands the importance of carefully choosing his words. Co-workers took note. Some made fun of him for being the lineup's philosopher. He accepted it. Once on air, he stated, "When you feed turtles before sunrise, you get perspective." The tape from the episode went viral, not because it was sarcastic, but because it was so genuine that it caught everyone off guard. Viewers felt something more significant beneath the jokes. Evolution, his target demographic, middle-aged viewers who had experienced numerous reinventions themselves, found resonance in that progression. They saw a reflection of midlife recalibration in him, lessons learned, faults accepted, and peace reinterpreted. Younger audiences were more interested in relationship goals. It was cinematic to watch an athlete-comedian commentator find equilibrium. The combination of inspiration and realism resonated with all demographics, something algorithmic marketing was unable to do. It was evidence that sincerity still translates, even when it is fragmented. Meanwhile, Ingrid unintentionally became a fascinating person. Fitness magazines started inquiring about her programs, and interviews sought her viewpoint on juggling marriage, motherhood, and business. She only took a few, but she made good use of them. Her recurrent theme is that transformation is a continuous maintenance plan rather than a highlight reel. She frequently cited her own pivotal moments, such as the day she threw away her old clothes after dropping the first 50 pounds, the worry she had when her kid was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and the choice to turn her dread into motivation for her studies. Her brand became more relatable as a result of those experiences, which also changed the focus to her husband. Rather than being the wife of a media figure, she went on to co-author The Greater Tale of Perseverance. The contrast between the spectacle of celebrity and the stability of well-being was appreciated by the crowd. From that perspective, their notoriety changed from spectacle to credibility. Comments were more appreciative than gossip when she shared behind-the-scenes photos of their blended family helping or constructing animal cages. Once controversial viewers now stayed for the wisdom. Their home's apparent tranquility grew strangely alluring in a digital world that has grown numb to indignation. It was a rebranding of intent rather than a retreat from ambition. He frequently asserted that whereas true influence rewarded regularity, media cycles encouraged cacophony. They demonstrated consistency as revolt when they worked together. Their trip is remarkable because it revisits themes from childhood, such as identity, stability, and belonging. Once excluded due to the color of his skin, the boy now cultivates an inclusive family. Now, the stranded teen creates permanency in relationships and soil. Transparency is now a daily habit for the man who was charged and questioned. Every habit creates a better sequel, but none of it erases the past. Perhaps this is the reason why followers are still engrossed. They are seeing a continuous story of salvation in which penance is practiced rather than declared. There are new chapters every year. He revealed plans to write a memoir in late 2024 that would examine lessons learned from fatherhood, sports, and the media. As usual, he said it would emphasize humor as a survival tactic rather than headlines. The teaser said, "Every punchline is a scar told sideways." The statement, which reflected his tone perfectly, partly optimistic, part melancholic, spread swiftly across media. Ingrid revised manuscripts at home, pointing out passages that went too far in the direction of self-defense. She said, "Let them see the cracks." The line resonated with him. He used it again in subsequent interviews, attributing his inspiration and chief editor to her. That's where the light fits. The Murdochs continue to be a mixture of contrasts as 2025 draws near: TV arguments and early morning farm tasks, public influence and personal humor, strength expressed in consistency rather than loudness. He now gauges accomplishment by the quiet after putting kids to bed, rather than by the thunderous applause of a studio audience. Ingrid continues to develop workout regimens and engage in impassioned on-air debates. However, the fundamental idea that underlies all broadcast voices is the same: growth is about rewriting the meaning of your origins rather than trying to escape them. The audience now stays for substance instead of shock. Every feature and quiet update contributes to the general perception that redemption stories are educational rather than merely entertaining. The Murdochs were able to garner genuine admiration, something that many public relations campaigns strive for but few succeed in. It's the sort that's whispered in support, the silent affirmation of those who have stumbled, gotten back up, and realized that rhythm in someone else's life, rather than the kind that's blasted across social media threads. Indeed, the headlined Tyrus from Fox News steps out with his famous wife and fans are stunned depicted a reaction rather than a single moment. The picture of the fighter, the commentator, and the performance suddenly defined by tenderness, humility, and domestic ease shocked fans because it defied expectations. In retrospect, though, perhaps the biggest shock is that we ever anticipated anything less. Ultimately, a man who dedicated his life to transforming turmoil into story was destined to discover beauty in harmony. Furthermore, a woman who transformed via discipline was bound to transform storytelling into sustenance, sometimes televised, sometimes buried behind the daily grind. Their story goes on. However, for the time being, they stand for something timeless, evidence that fame does not negate humanity and that, on occasion, going out with the right person at your side is the most noteworthy thing you can do.